One of my habits is to create new organizations. And I don't think Mick McCoulter likes that because he wanted to hold me back in petroleum. So I created the National Fisheries Authority, and then the Petroleum and Energy Department, and then the National Gas Office, and then I had the unfortunate task of creating the National Energy Authority, which I hope is the last. I'm sure you will agree with me. So the energy sector, an overview, the energy sector is not in a very good position at the moment, as you would also agree with me, because you are having daily experiences about it. There's so many unfortunate things about the sector which I could talk about, but I don't want to do that. If you could get my paper somehow, you can see for yourself the things that we are trying to fix. The national energy policy, I'll start there. I won't talk about the problems in the industry too much. But there are some good things happening. Generation of power projects haven't happened for a very, very long time until PNG Forest Products decided to leave forestry and go into power generation, which I'm quite impressed. They have 2 projects now, 9.5 megawatts each, Upper Bayun and Lower Bayun. So that's a good story, that something is happening in the industry. And then we have Warangoi is being completely refurbished. It was destroyed by siltation. Warangoi was destroyed by siltation. It was completely rebuilt, so people of East New Britain should be happy with that. ADB funding. And then the latest one is Dibune in Oro, 3 megawatts. Warangoi is 7 megawatts, I think. So there's something good happening. Biggest problem in Leh and Mosby, as you already know, it's aging infrastructure is the biggest problem. Generation in Leh will struggle a bit, but what Mosby, we have an oversupply. We have an oversupply of power. So I don't know how PPL is going to buy all this power, which they have approved, and it's coming on stream through IPPs. So as I said, I'm not going to talk too much about the problems, but I'll go to the policies. Or maybe I should say something about downstream oil and gas. That's the only right we have, without offending Secretary Mana. We have some role in downstream DMO gas, especially to distribute DMO gas. It's Section 88 of the Act allows the National Energy Authority to do that. I'm actually disappointed that an LPG plant, Secretary Manao, hasn't been built in the country. It's one of the simple things to do. Others in the room, including my friends, might not agree. And I'm disappointed that the refinery at Napanapa, Sir Rabi and I tried so hard to get it done, and it was done. And my chief economist told me it was not going to be done, and we did it. So I'm disappointed that it's been shut down. It's a story, it's an image that is not good for us, that oil and gas cannot be processed and used in this country. It's wrong. That's not right. So, Secretary, I'm not trying to offend you, but I'm disappointed with that. Okay, can I go to the National Energy Policy slide? So there you go. The National Energy Policy and the National Energy Authority have been my two basic tasks. I completed the National Energy Policy, and I have completed the National Energy Authority Act. So it's time for me to move on, because that's the way I live my life. But anyway, Prime Minister asked me to be chairman, so probably hang around for 1 or 2 years just to help them get off the ground. National Energy Policy was approved by NEC in 2018, and it's a very wide-ranging policy, very comprehensive. I must acknowledge Dr. Clement Waine and his team for starting this ball rolling, and finally we finished the policy. We were working on the National Energy Plan now with the Department of National Planning, so it's in the early stages. But we have moved ahead with implementation, so looks like the National Energy Plan is coming up a bit late if there are any colleagues in national planning here. We should have done that earlier, but we should get started on that. I just want to focus on the subsector policies. Hydro policy is very important. Hydro has been carrying our industry, and we need a good hydro policy. We have received draft policies from consultants, so the National Energy Authority will review the document and prepare a policy to go to Cabinet for approval. The other energy source that's given priority is solar. You can see there are 4, I've got only 4 there. They are the 4 sources of energy that are considered to be easily harnessed. So we are focusing on those 4 energy sources. Solar has been taking off slowly. There are no big solar projects yet, although you hear about them all around the world. But it's slowly picking up, and I will talk to you about National Electrification Rollout Plan later. You will see how important solar is in terms of rural areas. Okay, geothermal, the managing director of MRA has spoken about that. I guess National Energy Authority comes in once the heat comes to the surface, and energy is required for power generation. So there is a role for National Energy Authority to use the thermal energy for power generation. And there's already projects. Here is a good example. Wind energy is an intermittent energy source, meaning it's not very reliable. But PNG Power Limited believes that wind is a very important source of energy, so we are supporting them. And so we have documents from consultants, solar as well. We are working on to develop these policies and bring them to National Executive Council. I want to go to I've discussed all the policies, so can you go to the slide on National Energy Authority, please? Oh, sorry, provincial governments. I do want to say something about provincial governments, so can you bring that slide up? Okay, it's important that we engage with the second level of government. It's a constitutional requirement. So we will be working closely with the provinces to help them develop their policies and plans. Yeah, that's the only comment I want to make about that. Can you bring me up the slide on National Energy Authority? You have no National Energy Authority. That's it. Okay, there you go. That's the progress of the legislation which was approved, has come into force on the 6th of July through the National Gazette by the head of state. Another legislation very important is the Electric Industry Amendment Act, which came into force on the same dates. What is important to say about the two legislations are that they have removed all the powers from PNG Power, regulatory powers I mean, and ICCC. So all the regulatory powers are now vested in the NEA. The second thing I want to say about this slide is the institutional structure. The structure of the new organization is ready for approval by Personnel Management Department, so we are waiting for them to do that. In the meantime, we have an interim structure. About 16 new people were recruited to join this, join the former Energy Wing, which was under Secretary Manav's watch, Department of Petroleum and Energy. So we would like to move from the transitional structure to go to a full structure and recruitment. Next slide, please. Okay, these are the transitional arrangements for those who are interested. A transitional plan has been prepared to assist any undertake essential and priority tasks to meet the needs of the industry, especially industry stakeholders. So this task, approval of the institutional structure and recruitment. We have issues with office space and internet and other services. It was a very small unit which we are trying to build up, Energy Wing. So it will take some time, but we are working as hard as we could. We have recruited advisors to work with us on policies and regulations. We hope that an interdepartmental working group will be established soon to help us, especially with the budget. So far, they've given us only 2 million. I don't know what you can do with 2 million. I'm not quite there, so we need the approval of the board as well. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is that major task that we are faced with. And we're haggling a lot with US, Australia, Japan, and New Zealand. Life was a bit easier when we were working only with one player, World Bank. But now we have more players, so it's taking long to agree on what we have to do. But an institutional structure is going to NEC, and the donors have committed about 1.5 billion for at least next 5 years. Hopefully more money, because we need to deliver 70% of electricity to PNG households. Prime Minister's challenge is that we must do as much as possible by 2025. But we'll see. We can't make any promises. But we'll try to do as much as we can. We are also working on specific policies and regulations in the rural areas, where the technical standards will have to be a bit more flexible, and a completely different tariff system will have to be introduced, because people can't afford to pay the normal power rates in the villages. And if we can't do what is called mini grids, which require these regulations and the new tariff system, then we will probably do only solar home systems and some basic lighting and things like that. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's what I've said. So mini grids, sorry, go back again. I just said something about mini grids. Now the mini grids is a, excuse me, it's a new concept. It's standalone from the main grids. And it has been done in other countries, where you can connect up to 2,000 or 3,000 households with a grid. Our issue is that they have to be sustainable, and the donors and financiers think that we have to bring in private sector. We are not too sure whether the private sector will be happy if they don't make money building and operating mini grids, because affordability is a big issue. So as I said earlier, we might use solar home systems or pico hydros, very small hydros, to provide electricity to villages around the country. Next slide, please. Well, this is what it's about. This workshop is about. I'll just say a few things very generally. We have benefits in the new Act similar to in the National Energy Authority Act, similar to what is happening in mining and petroleum. The benefits for, I haven't got a slide on that, yeah, I'm just talking. We have benefits going to national government and provincial governments and landowners, and minister is required to call some meetings to get all the stakeholders together to agree on benefit sharing. And the big issue of landowner identification, there are at least two methods we've introduced in the Act. LIR, it's a landowner investigation report, the method used by Lands Department, and SMLI, used by Petroleum, but it's up to an investor to use one of those methods. Demarcation, land demarcation is another important way of, demarcation of clan boundaries, I mean. It's another way of establishing who owns the land. So it's a community outreach. Dealing with communities is a big issue. All of us know that. So I have that slide there. We will have a whole department in the National Energy Authority, meaning a whole division. And we will have to recruit well-trained people to deal with our people in the remote areas. The previous two slides where I talked about NEROP, National Electrification Rollout Plan, it will require dealing with people at the village level to know exactly what they need and whether we can afford it. What kind of solution, power, electricity excess solution, each household not necessarily household, but each village will need, and maybe down to households. So it's a big challenge for us to come up with find the right solutions, right technologies, and the right regulations to bring power to 100% of our people by 2050. And there is nothing like that in PNG. They do it in sub-Saharan Africa, so that gives us a hope. Maybe it can be done here. But when you think of it, there's only 15% electricity access to industrial consumers, commercial consumers, and urban households. Nothing in the villages. Very little. That is a very sad case. Why PNG cannot have access? All the Pacific Islands have access to electricity, all households. Maybe on PNG and Solomon Islands are not doing too well at all. So it's a big challenge for all of us. And please help at the village level. Talk to us about what exactly the solution you want to see for your homes and your villages. So I'll just have one last slide, Dr. Melam. Next one, please. So we are not only doing these little things, but our hands are full as well on major projects, and we have barely started or got established, and we already have a multi-billion projects. You know, the Prairie hydrogen project, liquid hydrogen project, Mr. Forrest and his company, Fortescue Minerals, they're actually very active, and they are in our offices every day to do this project. So I told them, have you defined what your project is? We don't know what hydrogen liquid is. So we need to know whether you're going to do this or not. This is the first time we heard about this. But they're very active. They want that project to happen, so they must really have a project, but we'll see. But they are active, so it's a big project. I don't know, probably 15 or 20 billion kina project. Hydro-wise, Prairie can produce 2,000 megawatts, which is about 20 billion kina. And then we have another big project on our hands, which is Karamui. Karamui is another 2,000 megawatts project, another 20 billion kina project. And then we have one in Finschhafen, which is being pushed by the Chinese, basically, about 200 megawatts. And at the same time, we have to work with PPL to bring on board the Ramu 2 project to deal with all the conditions precedent before we can issue them license. Okay, the last slide. So NEA is challenging, but I think it's exciting and doable what we are trying to do. And I hope we recruit people who are determined to, make their institution their legacy and they can be proud of. We need help. We need funding for at least 2 years, but we have built into the Act revenue streams to keep it, make it self-sustaining. So what we really need most is, in the long term, in the next 50 years, is rural electrification. Government and private sector and everyone, even our village people, have to contribute to making that story of bringing power to the remote areas a success. Thank you.